Hello and welcome to the 50th episode of Talking Sense with Srini. I thank each one of our viewers for their unwavering support since the inception of this program. We're bringing this as the special episode from the premises of the Madras Christian College with the participation of the students of Department of Journalism. And the topic is also a little interesting this time. It's about the 100 years of the left, right and the centre, the Communist Party of India, marking its 100 years of its existence, and the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the ideological parent of the Bharatiya Janata Party, also marking its 100 years on the Vijayadashmi of 2025. And we also have the Congress Party, which has already crossed its 100 years. Since the Belagavi session of the Congress, it's been hosted by Mahatma Gandhi. Joining us to decode how these political mainstream ideologies have shaped India in the past, in the present, and in the future is our editor-in-chief, Srinivasan.
Hi Vijay, it's been really a pleasure. I can't imagine that we're already on the 50th episode. Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. And thanks to our viewers. So, I'd like to begin with you. After independence, India chose a very centrist ideology under Nehru prime ministership. We also had the other ideologies as well. Obviously, the right under Savarkar, and the left was also quite active, with a lot of student participation and all that, just like how it is even today. So why did India choose to go with a centrist ideology there?
Very interesting question with a very broad sweep. So we'll have to cover one by one. It's right that India chose the centrist policy. Basically, it happened because of Mahatma Gandhi, who took that line. The left parties, as you mentioned, it's actually completed 100 years now, 2026. So is RSS, which represents right forces in India. And Congress Party actually completed 140 years. Just it happens to be the Belgavi session of the Congress, and that happened here. It celebrated its 100th.
In December of 2024, yeah.
Exactly. So it's a very interesting that all three ideologies are completing 100 years in 2026. Another thing I might remind you, we are sitting in Chennai, and the Dravidian politics.
That's right, yeah.
Even that completes 100 years.
They're closing in the elections as well.
Exactly. So all these ideologies, which varying degrees of, impact on people all these years, have in a way converged in one year, 2026. That way it's very special. So as journalists, I think it's important that we examine what happened. But what we are seeing certainly in last one decade, especially after the arrival of this regime headed by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, 2014, it's a kind of a regime change. That's how I would define. Because all these years, a particular ideology, which is centrist, has dominated Indian politics. There were at least 2 or 3 moments when BJP was in power, once just about for 13 days, 13 months, and then another nearly a 5-year term, but Vajpayee couldn't complete it. And also the Janata Party was also in power briefly. But otherwise, it was largely dominated by centrist Congress Party. And you asked the question, why India chose this particular ideology. Pre-independence, it's not as if the left today, if you see it is decimated, it's less than...
There's one state there.
Exactly. There is only one state, which is Kerala, and their numbers as a member of parliament...
Dwindling.
Single digit, almost.
Right, yeah.
So it's not as if left was always like this. In between 1925 and 1947, actually they were pretty aggressive force. They concentrated a lot on basic questions, which is basically land reforms, which is basically emancipation of poor. So they did several such movements. If you remember the Rajakas movement, which happened in Hyderabad, it was actually led by the CPI. Again, the land rights movement in West Bengal, again, it was the left parties.
That's right.
So the left played a very important role, but they focused on issues rather than focusing so much on the freedom movement then. So that's why by the time it happened, 1947, it's Congress which took the center stage. And on the other hand, the right forces were also pretty active. Hindu Mahasabha was one important, factor, which was there. It's actually formed even before RSS. RSS came later, and Veer Savarkar was the ideologue of that point of view. And it was a very strong point of view, which was being articulated by him. He also followed Gandhi. He visited London. He held various meetings. Savarkar also wanted to see a certain vision of India. So both these ideologies were conflicting. But finally, Gandhi was able to he emerged as an extremely towering figure over all of them. And this centralist ideology of Congress dominated because of the ground movement which he could launch. Gandhi's, grassroots movement was very powerful. He was able to mobilize the masses. He could catch their imagination. A large part of India was pretty poor. He could actually send correct messages. He also changed himself. He just wore a lion cloth. He didn't. He wanted to be one among them.
Yeah.
So he dressed himself suitably. He spoke the language which they understood and launched a lot of massive movements which they identified. You can name a lot. But the final straw was a Quit India movement in which neither the left nor the right participated. And the show was completely of the Congress party. And then onwards, basically, they took the march. Subsequently, when they got into power, following the independence, Gandhi chose Nehru to govern because he saw in Nehru someone who was more modern, who thought actually he could build India the way he perceived his vision of India. He was more on the social side. Gandhi was a bit on the right also because he could do all those things which the right wanted.
For his love for Ram?
Yeah, exactly. And he was not anti-religion. He did not present his form of secularism, which actually the Western concept, which is separating the church and state. Instead of that, he went for a more cohesive,
he wanted
more
to bring
inclusive.
Ishwar Allah
Exactly.
together.
More cohesive, more inclusive, because he could see the divide. Because India is a very complex nation. If you look at from religion, from
Caste.
region, caste, languages, so it's pretty complex. So Gandhi was able to foresee all this, and he kind of worked as a binding figure who could bring together, even within the Congress party, the extreme polarity, he could all bring together under one umbrella, which is a big tent Congress party then.
Right is right now seems to be the dominant force as far as the Indian political spectrum is concerned. And and the rise of right is often, at least by the general public, they think it's all because of the Advani's Rath Yatra and Ram Janmabhoomi movement. But if you really look at it, some political pundits say it all started off in the post-1975 era of emergency when Indira Gandhi was your prime minister. Would you agree with this idea?
I think there is some sense in what you're saying. There are few instances which actually resulted in the rise of right-wing politics. It was always there, but it was dormant. While Hindu Mahasabha wanted more electoral politics, RSS wasn't into that. RSS, which completes 100 years, initially they wanted to build character of a Hindu. They thought Hindus are too weak. We must build a Hindu. We must build a Hindu India. A Hindu stands strong. I mean, that was their ideology. They always emphasized on character building rather than electoral politics. Whereas Hindu Mahasabha was more into electoral politics. They could not raise because subsequently after 1947, following the assassination of Gandhi, RSS took a big hit because Mahasabha and other forces were seen directly as related to what had happened. So then subsequently Sardar Patel banned the organization, and then therefore they were silent for a while. And they all went down quiet because it's such a traumatic moment for India that after independence something massive like this had happened. Right, yeah. So that's why you didn't see them didn't hear for a decade or so. But then what happened was subsequently other things started happening, as you are trying to point out, in the late 70s. After the exit of the Janata government, the Janata experiment, which kind of failed midway, there were a number of instances, but there are two particular instances which happened, and one happened in Tamilnadu in 1980s, 1980, 81, I think, when the Meenakshipuram incident happened. Mass conversion took place.
That's right, Dalits.
Yeah, exactly. So they chose to, to convert themselves to Islam. I mean, this actually shook the RSS and Hindu, the political thing very badly. And they decided they should do something quickly. The other thing which happened simultaneously, Mrs. Gandhi had also begun to kind of veer towards right. And that was seen for the first time in the Jammu Kashmir elections, where this is again in the 80s. I think somewhere it happened in 83 or something. I could be getting my data. We had to check it. But surely what happened was a division between, for the first time, Jammu and Kashmir. Those fault lines came there. And that was another turning point. So when these things started happening, so I think that's where the right forces begin to think that it's an opportunity for them to gather together. But then subsequently, a lot of other things happened. One important factor in that being the Ram Janmabhoomi agitation, which started in Ayodhya. The other one is when subsequently, after death of Indira Gandhi, when Rajiv Gandhi came to power, his decision on Shah Banu case, in his decision to bring an ordinance and try to turn the judgment turned to be another big turning points. So all these things together resulted in the revival of the right in India.
What exactly went wrong with the left? The left is just left with a single state, as we just discussed with Kerala. And, even there we see the Congress taking a edge in the upcoming elections as well. So what's profound? Is there something that's profoundly wrong in the structure of the left in India?
Well, there are a number of factors. You cannot just say, but I'll try to quickly, bring about some of these issues. Why left failed? The left was, as I said, in 1951-52 elections, they were pretty dominant. After Congress, they were the second largest party, actually, bloc.
Yeah.
And they were doing pretty well. But because during the independence movement, because they took a position before independence movement, the Britishers were trying to really suppress them. So they lied low because they were banned. No, they chose to support the Britishers because of in the Second World War, whereas the Congress party went against, therefore Congress was banned. But subsequently, when they came up, they could revive because of the various grassroots level reforms they had started. But the left, it had a very young leadership, and they were very, in their approach, they weren't open. It was very kind of dogmatic. So they would rather doctrine. Their approach was pretty doctrine, that they should go by what Marxism says.
That's right. Yeah, what the Chinese
They did not try to adapt to Indian conditions. I mean, I'll give you just an example. When Kentucky Fried Chicken came to India, nobody touched it until they tried to indigenize their menu.
Okay.
And which actually appealed to the taste buds of the local Indians. Similarly, Communist Party did not try to reinvent the local realities. They stuck doggedly to their philosophy. That was one. Second is, very important thing in India is caste. And they only focused on class. And they kept out of this. And they did not realize that this is a reality, Indian reality, where elections, when you get into electoral politics, you want to keep aside caste, it's pretty tough to get into that. The third thing is, they did once in a while form some coalitions with the socialists. Even if they had continued, this was an on and off relationship, but if they had continued with it, they could have done very well in some states like Punjab, they could have done very well in Haryana, because these people had Bihar, Uttar Pradesh. On the other hand, socialists took a different turn. They become more casteist, which is what you see the arrival of Lalu's party, RJD, which is now RJD, but it is Lalu Prasad Yadav's party in Bihar. What do you see? Emergence of, similar socialist movement in Uttar Pradesh in the form of Samajwadi Party, which is basically Mulayam Singh's party. Now is run by his son, Akhilesh Yadav. All these people were actually socialists because they were all Lohiite. But then they started kind of chasing caste politics and could strike some roots in these states. Whereas Communist Party, who were largely present and could form government in 3 states, Kerala, West Bengal, Tripura, they could not continue this because in West Bengal, over a period of time, politics became very lumpenized. At the grassroots level, a lot of muscle power came into being. And again, they were not able to get into various reforms. They were not able to change. So in a way, they frittered whatever the advantages they had. And after being in power for nearly 3 decades, they could not revive. They did get 1 or 2 chances at the center. But then again, because of the stand taken by the leaders, the Communist Party, the whole party structure is controlled more from the center. The Central Committee is extremely powerful. They took the decision.
The Politburo.
Exactly. They could have been more if they had more decentralized. They were more federal in
nature.
Probably they could have done better.
Okay.
But then you still see fringes of Communist Party here and there. Like you still have CPI-ML in Bihar.
Yeah.
Which part
and not just that, even in institutions as well.
So the thought process is still there. JNU still, it dominates.
Absolutely.
In many places. Student politics.
Kerala, it's widespread.
Yeah. So it's still there. The thought hasn't completely gone, but it doesn't have the pre-eminence which it used to have. And even in the 80s, even in the 90s, though the numbers were less, they had the, whatever their strength, they used to bat beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
That was the ability. Nowadays, of course, they are slid.
As we spoke about the left and the right, I want to talk a little bit about the centrist ideology, the Congress party here, which is also seems hollow, and in a right-dominated world, particularly under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So, you see, there is some kind of a paradigm shift in the Indian thinking, because the centrism is some kind of a nuanced idea. You might choose to disagree with me, but, Kamal Hassan also, when he came out with the Makkal Neethi Mayam, he said, he's at the center of the political spectrum. He said, you think people are unwilling to agree with the idea because, especially in a polarized world like this, a nuanced idea doesn't really have much of a role to play for the current generation?
No, it's not like that. I would rather say that it still has. You see, even today, if you see the percentage of vote which the right dominating BJP has got, it's got about 44%. There is still a large section of people which are looking for the alternate point of view. It is not as if all the votes have gone to one side. Mm-hmm. So there is still space. And then what has basically happened is a lot of basic principles of Congress, they seem to have forgotten. I mean, recently you saw the spectacle of Digvijay Singh, who attends the Congress Working Committee meeting. And then just before that, he tweets saying that, shouldn't we take some lessons from RSS, which is so well organized? Now, he has a point. What he's trying to say is we have lost our grassroots support base. But then he didn't need to show to show RSS as an example. He could have shown his own party as an example. Once upon a time when the independence movement was being run, that time it was basically Seva Dal which was running the show. Seva Dal nowadays reduced to hoisting flags and taking salutes on important days like Foundation Day of the party. But earlier, the Seva Dal workers used to be present in each and every village. They would be the first contact of any crisis in any village. They would be the mobilizers of the social issues. They are in the forefront. So Congress party over a period of time has lost touch with the ground. It has become a party of leaders. There are more leaders than followers. And then what happened following the economic reforms of 1990s also became extremely corrupt. And you saw last regime of Manmohan Singh riddled with whole kinds of crises.
That's right.
Whole kinds of scams. You heard about 2G scam, coal scam, Commonwealth Games scam. You name any scam which happened during that period of time. I think, therefore, dynastic politics, Gandhi's over a period of time, the Congress party wasn't there originally like this. It was, it was more democratic. Any leader could rise, come up to the ranks and become the leader. But those things have actually slowly begun to go. It still exists in patches. For instance, Revanth Reddy has become a leader in Telangana. There are other leaders who have come up the hard way. But then it has become an exception than a rule. And that's why you see the decline of centrist parties. But it is not as if they don't have a space. They don't have issues. There are plethora of issues which they can raise and then once again come up. But they're not able to do because of the factors I mentioned. One essential thing being inability to mobilize the grassroots. Second, also, they never had, the support base There, it was more a coalition of various social forces which formed the backbone. Now, BJP was able to take it away a major chunk by making an appeal to Hindutva forces, majoritarian. And that began to appeal to a large section of people because of various things I told you, because of the corruption and their desire to see post-globalization, especially the middle class, that, we should be dominating, we should be doing better in this world. We need better access to we need access to quality goods. Those kind of basically expectations led to fall of the centrist forces.
Okay, so one last question, sir, before we open the floor for questions from the students. We spoke about the past and the present as well. So now I want to keep the last question forward-looking. How do you see the right seems to be most dominant right now, as we've been speaking under Prime Minister Modi. It's been laid a very strong foundation there. Do you lots of comparisons are happening with the current right and the centrists that happened after the initial decades of India's independence there. Is it what are we looking at, or how do you see the political aspects of India?
Well, it's very interesting. Last 1 decade, what has happened? Like I said, it's a complete regime change. Obviously, the appeal is more towards, it's moving more towards majoritarian kind of politics, where the nation first, which is basically normally any right-wing politics actually puts. They go by this agenda. Nation is always there, because of the three things: liberty, equality, fraternity. They go more for liberty, which is basically freedom, and therefore that's the way the right always moves. But what has happened here is last 1 decade, what we are seeing is actually a consolidation of that, and you have seen various decisions taking place. But there is another interesting aspect which has happened. Following the globalization, the difference between the right, left, center all actually have got merged at some point of time here and there. Mm-hmm. So we may be more like journalists arguing, writing our articles and thinking about it. But for a layperson, they hardly bother about these things because since we are in a more globalized world, since the nations have to deal with each other, there are many compromises. And even here, because they look at the changes abroad, they want to bring those changes here as well. So here you would see even a right-wing party like BJP accepting a lot of policies which actually seem socialist in nature. Okay,
That's
so
right.
So it's not as if it's a very clear economic line which is cut and then the right will take only a certain kind of decision on the left. It's not like that. The other factor which has happened is post-ideology parties also, which Aam Aadmi Party is one good example. Said that one day when Kejriwal would speak, it would appear as if he is appealing to the majority community. The other day he will speak as if he is appealing to a minority. You would still don't know where he stands. So we are seeing a certain churn, a certain change, but certainly the majoritarian politics, especially the right-wing one, is right now on a very strong footing, and it has got a very strong appeal right now in a major part of India. And that's primarily because the previous election, 2024, did show that this, there is a scope for the opposition, because in a democracy, it is important that opposition plays a very crucial role. I would rather say that while the right is raising, it also starkly represents the failure of the opposition to get its acts together.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Very insightful talking to you. We'll now open the floor for questions.
You talked about that leftist downfall, right, sir? Could it be also the downfall for splitting of party, like CPI split into CPIM splitting into CPI? Could this be also the potential downfall of Indian leftists, sir?
Yeah. It's one significant point that left, despite being in such a disarray, could not get together. Look, even on celebration of 100 years, they haven't got together to do any noise. Whereas on the other side, you can see so many celebrations being organized. The communist parties are not united, and they could have at least got united among themselves. And you know the reason why the split came between CPI and CPM. And again, the line they took, so supporting the Congress party, and subsequently also the line they took on whom to back. So I think, yeah, this is also an important reason for the failure, that the left bloc on its own couldn't stay together.
The RSS, they have been told that they are, Hindu Rashtra. Their core motive was a Hindu Rashtra before. But then later on, they have also different sections, different ranges in RSS, where there are Muslim community people. They have a separate wing for Muslim community people and a separate community for Christian community people. So do you think the narrative of RSS has changed, and the Congress party is not ready to accept because of their, the mid phase where Congress had a lot of leftist ideologies implemented? So do you think that's what is stopping us from accepting that RSS also has been changed?
I think, when you discuss RSS, I think you need to go back and read up some of the writings of the various RSS founders. Maybe you should read a bit of Golwalkar, what he has written. What did Hegdewar say? All that you have to see. This whole thing of trying to create a kind of narrative saying that, look, Muslims are also included. Even they have for women also, they want to show as if they're inclusive. But then there are two aspects: what they say and what they do. You must see the deed. Can you imagine a situation? Nearly 17 to 18% of, even if you take less, 15 to 16% of population comprises of Muslims in India. And since 2014, not a single member of parliamentary ticket has been given to a single Muslim candidate. Okay. The second, this has actually spread to various alliance partners of NDA as well. In the recent Bihar election also, you saw the number of Muslim candidates, even the constituents of NDA reducing gradually. And there is so much of impact of this that even Congress party, which spoke so much about, social, emphasis on reforming social sector and other related issues, were quiet on this. So it has had an overall impact. So you have to actually see the deed, what they actually do, and not what they simply say. Politicians have this way of saying this.
My question is that many students today, almost all the population, feel that calling yourself a centrist sounds less like having a clear opinion and more like taking no stand at all. What are your thoughts on that?
What has happened is, when there is a polarization which happens, and these are extreme points of view. On the one hand, the right has a very clear agenda. They are able to articulate their point of view very, very clearly and say that, look, this is how things should be. And on the left, they are able to oppose it. Now, what you see, even the protests which happened in Delhi, in JNU, is, it's bit on its extremities. So when there are two opposing point of view, it's possibly very easy to say or understand what it is. The centrist point of view tends to be more nuanced. It's a bit more layered. You need to understand, because it'll always have some caveats built into that. So possibly that's the reason that, people want more decisive, and especially I think it's more of a middle class which wants to say, or maybe it's also of less, like we were discussing earlier in your staff room, that the quick answers which you need, instead of going deep into a subject and trying to understand and trying to see the layered meaning below that, probably it is much easier to take a call.
Well, that's a wrap of this edition of Talking Sense with Srini. I want to take this moment to thank the Department of Journalism, Madras Christian College, for making this 50th episode possible to shoot at their campus. Thank you very much. We'll meet you with another interesting episode. Until then, bye for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Vijay.